easy, James here. Now SSDs, or solid state drives, are becoming very popular in this day and age, and for good reason. I mean, the main reason is obviously the performance, up to 6 gigabits per second. And it's what most people invest in SSD technology for, is because of the increased performance over regular hard disks. Now also there are a few other benefits like reliability. Now I'm going to be honest with you, in my opinion, I think reliability when it comes to this is relative, because it's just one of those things. The more complicated you make electronics, the more likelihood there is for failure. Now, okay, hard drives have moving parts which can fail. SSDs have no moving parts, so obviously there's no likelihood of failure there. They are more robust. You know, you could probably juggle an SSD while it's running. You try and do that with a hard drive and see how long it lasts. Probably not very long. But I think the problem is that a lot of manufacturers of SSDs are being very bold on their claims of how many write cycles their drives are capable of. Some of them claiming that their write cycles are in the hundreds of millions and even in the billions, which I think there's a little bit of market wankery going on there. I don't think they're really capable of billions of write cycles. I think there's a way they've kind of got away with saying that. But I do think there needs to be some kind of standard in place so that drive manufacturers don't kind of, you know, fall below standards. But then the trouble is with that, obviously you've got kind of that two-way street where you're juggling reliability over affordability, because, you know, as standards get tougher and drives get more reliable, the price is obviously going to go up, and a lot of people in this day and age like saving money over reliability. But there you go. Now the other thing is power consumption. Now a typical hard drive could probably chew up between 9 and 12 watts, whereas, you know, your average SSD is probably likely to run quite happily on as little as 5 watts. Now you're going to have a clear benefit there if you're using a laptop, or maybe if you're a little bit worried about overloading the power supply in your PC. You know, you could probably ram 10 of those in your PC and your power supply will pretty much laugh at it. So there's a lot of benefits, but there are some people that are possibly still slightly skeptical and maybe a little bit worried about investing into SSD technology. And it's not because they don't believe that any of this is true, it's probably because they've tried to get advice, you know, maybe from some geek on the internet, and he's like, yeah, I'm running an SSD, and I've also got the new Gigabyte throat slitter motherboard, and I've got a Core i7 4770 quad, and I've got 32 gigs of RAM, and, you know, he's got a boner over his £3,000 computer, and then after all that he says, yeah, SSDs are great, they're really fast, you should get one. And they're probably left sitting there thinking, well, I haven't got a £3,000 computer like that, and maybe you haven't. Maybe you've got something like, I don't know, this cheap garden variety laptop, for instance. I mean, yeah, alright, it's got good performance, but then so is pretty much every laptop in this day and age. But it's nothing special, it's just a laptop. So if you own this, are you actually going to get any benefit by putting an SSD into something like this? And that is the question we're going to answer, because that's the question I get most commonly asked about this subject, is whether you have any benefit using SSDs in something like cheap laptops and things like that. And to help me answer this question, I've been out and brought an SSD. And if you're interested, this particular one is the Samsung 840 EVO. I'm going to bung this in the laptop and we're going to compare it against a regular hard disk and see if there's actually any performance benefit whatsoever in putting this in the laptop. Now, I'm not going to use the hard drive that's actually inside this laptop now, because it's not the original hard drive that came with it. It's actually an aftermarket one, and it's a cheap one I got from Maplins years ago, and it's of a slightly older type, and it's not a true representation of what you're going to have in a modern laptop. You see, laptops nowadays all use what's called hybrid HDDs, and so I've got one of those as well. Now this is a better representation of what you're probably going to have in your laptop. Now this one in here is a particular make and model that is very popular for use with OEMs like Dell, Lenovo, Compaq, Acer, just to name a few. So this is very likely going to be the hard drive that is in your laptop. So that's the one we're going to compare it against. And we're going to look at a few things. Firstly, we're going to look at boot up times, because that's very important. You don't want to sit there waiting all day for a boot up. And I think 30 seconds is quite a reasonable time to wait for a boot up. You don't want to be waiting 5 minutes, what some people. This laptop right now takes about 5 minutes to actually fully boot up. Now, one quick thing to bear in mind, which is something we're not going to do here. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube where people are testing these things and they install Windows 7 on it, and then they do a boot up time and go, wow, it boots up in 10 seconds. SSDs are so fast. And it's like, no, that's not really a true representation of a boot up time. Simple reason is of course it's going to boot up in 10 seconds if all it's doing is just booting a fresh install of Windows. What we're going to do differently is, once we've installed Windows, we're going to install all the drivers, and I mean not just the basic drivers. We're not just going to drag in the DLL files. We're actually going to install all the little crappy utilities that come with the drivers, you know, all the things that load in your system tray. We're going to install antivirus software, because that really has an impact on your boot up time. That's more files that your system has to load when it fires up. And we're also going to install loads of little programs that are going to boot up in the system tray and really test this thing and see how fast it can load all of those files on a single boot up. Then we will get a true representation of what a proper boot up should be. Now, just as a quick side note, I never use DVDs to install Windows. I always use flash disks, and I always recommend that people use flash disks when it comes to installing Windows, and in a minute you'll see exactly why. Now, the good thing is you don't need large flash disks. An 8GB flash disk will do you fine. I've just been out and bought a couple of these things, and I'll tell you what, they are dirt cheap in this day and age. So seriously, get yourself one of these. Right, so now we're going to put the SSD into the laptop first, and I'm going to install Windows on it. Now, if you've never changed the hard drive in a laptop before, it can be a little bit daunting. Maybe you're a little bit worried about doing it, but don't be. It's really, really easy. I'm going to talk you through it now. So first thing to do is obviously make sure your laptop's powered off. Turn the laptop upside down and remove the battery. Okay, so unclip the battery. There's usually a little clip here, and it's a slide clip. So you just slide that across and pull the battery out. There will be instructions on the bottom actually embossed into the plastic, as there is on this one. Now, if you look on the bottom of the laptop here, you'll see there's a few removable plates, and they usually have vents in them. Now, these plates are usually labelled and they have symbols on them. If you look at this one, for instance, this one has a symbol of an antenna, a disk, a microchip and a keyboard. So that means that all of these services are below this plate. So your Wi-Fi card, the screw for your CD-ROM, your memory and the screws for your keyboard. So this isn't the plate that you want to remove. This panel, however, has a symbol of a stack of disks, which, as you may know, is the universal symbol for hard drive. So the hard drive is underneath this panel, so this is the one you're going to want to remove. So once you've located the panel that you want to remove, you want to have a look at the holes in the panel and see what types of screws are in there. Now, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be Phillips head screws, but really small ones. So what you want to do is get yourself one of these tiny little screwdrivers. You can pick these up from your local hardware store. They're very cheap. You know, you can get a set of them for like $5 or something. So just pick yourself up one of them if you haven't already got one, or you can just borrow one, whatever. And then just go ahead and start undoing the screws that hold on that panel. Right, now, one problem that people run into when they're doing this is they undo the screws and they think, why aren't the screws coming out? And the reason being is because 9 times out of 10 these are going to be captive screws, which means they've got a little washer underneath which holds them in. So the screws don't actually come out, but the panel's still not coming off. And the reason being is because there's a load of clips around the outside holding the panel shut. Now, what you need to do is get your fingernails underneath the panel and try and prise it up with your fingernails. Don't start getting a screwdriver in there and start trying to prise it up with a screwdriver, because all you're going to do is mark up the plastic around the panel and it just doesn't look good. So get your fingernails underneath there and try and pull it up like that. And as you can see, look, there's clips there. But as I say, you will mark the edge of that up big time if you try and get a screwdriver in there and pull it. So don't do that. Right, now once you get the panel off, you need to actually take the hard drive out. Now there's 2 ways in which these drives are usually held into the laptop. One is you'll have a little tab and you'll pull on it, and it will actually, the hard drive will actually slide over and come disconnected, and then you can just pull it out. Now this one, however, has little rubber retainers here, and what you have to do is pull up the little tab this side and then pull it out. Now unfortunately the tab's broken on this one, so what I'm going to do is go against my advice and actually use a little screwdriver just to lift that up, and then it just pulls out, and then what you'll have is a little flexible cord that you can just unplug from the back of the drive like that, and that's the hard drive. Well, now the hard drive's always held into a little retainer cage, so you just have to take out 4 screws which are holding it in, and then the hard drive pops out, and that's your old drive. So now we get the new drive out the box, which is this one here, and then we'll pop this back in, and then just pop all the 4 screws back in, just like that. And we just plug our little connector back in. If you've got the type that just slides in, you won't have to do that bit. And then we literally just pop this cage back in, and that's it, job's a good one. You can go ahead, clip the panel back on, clip it down and do the 2 screws up, pop the battery back in, flip it over, and you're done. See, not that hard. And this is the reason why I always use flash drives to install operating systems. An entire Windows operating system installed in under 11 minutes. If that was CD-ROM, that would be a very different story. Yeah, don't even use CD-ROM, it's like proper old school. And just to show you, even loading the Windows setup console on its own, just off the flash disk, is a lot faster. Some of you guys may know that if you use an optical disc to do this, this can sometimes take quite a while just to even just load this. And as you can see, that's going pretty quick. Yeah, sometimes this can take anything up to 10 minutes before you can even actually start to set up Windows and actually do anything. And as you can see, this loads a setup in, 30 seconds. Okay, so I've installed Windows 7 on both the hard drive and the SSD, both exactly the same. So we're going to swap them over in turn and do a timed boot up run on each and see if the SSD actually performs any better than the regular hard drive. Now, as well as installing Windows, I've also installed all of the drivers for the laptop. I've also installed all of the utilities that go with those drivers, like the HD audio console and the Catalyst software for the graphics. I've installed all of the current updates, obviously current to the point that this video was filmed. There'll probably be another 5 million by tomorrow, but it's about as up to date as I can make it. I've also installed an antivirus software, which is AVG, because it is one of the more resource hungry antivirus softwares, so I've installed that one. I've also installed Skype, because that's another one of those annoying little things that boots up with Windows that a lot of people have on their laptop, and they have it boot up with Windows, so that's more of a realistic scenario. I've also installed iTunes, because that's another one that often people complain about. It's quite resource hungry, takes a long time to load, so that's another one I've put on there. And Google Chrome, the first time you load that when Windows boots up, it often takes quite a long time to load on a slightly slower laptop, or if you've got a slower hard drive. So I've installed all of those things, and I've told them all to fire up when Windows boots up. So we're going to boot Windows, and once all of those things are actually loaded, only then am I going to stop the clock and we'll declare a time on it. Now, one quick thing I'm going to mention, I've already booted the hard drive one about 3 or 4 times before doing this. Because it's a hybrid drive or an SSHD, it has to learn the frequently used files, and it usually takes a couple of boot ups before it does that. So I've done 3 or 4 just to be sure. So now the hard drive has learnt which files it has to load up. Okay, so we're going to start with the hard drive first. Now, I'm not going to do this in time lapse, I'm going to do it in real time, because 30 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but when you've got to sit there for 30 seconds, it can sometimes feel like an age. So I'm going to do it in real time so we can actually experience how long it takes. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Fan in that bloody laptop is so loud. I'm glad it never goes that fast when I'm using it, because that'd just get well annoying. Might actually be looking at a 30-second here, maybe. No, maybe not. 40 seconds? No, Oh, maybe. No, no, not 40. Oh, okay. Come on. Come on. Right, it's about 55 seconds to actually boot Windows, but we're not out of the woods yet because it's now got to load all of those extra bits that I've told it to. And I can't press stop until I see all of them on the screen loaded, so... Okay, there's Google Chrome. Wow, 1 minute and 20 seconds has never felt so long. I actually feel like I can go and cook a roast dinner in this time. In fact, if you're going for the world record of the quickest roast dinner ever cooked, I think you could probably do it in this amount of time. I suppose if you cook it in the microwave. I wonder if you can cook a roast dinner in the microwave. Actually, I've just realised I don't care. See, this is the kind of crap you think about when you're waiting for your computer to boot. Come on, 2 minutes. Come on. There's AVG. Come on, we're just waiting for iTunes now. I can't press stop until I see iTunes. And not just a whited out window of iTunes either. I've actually got to see iTunes fully loaded. Oh, come on! I'm getting a thirst on here. This is ridiculous. Oh man, come on. We're nearly at the 3-minute mark. This is a joke, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Yep, done. Wow, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. And I've got to say, that actually felt like an age. It really did. And to be honest, I can still hear that hard drive churning in there, so it actually still hasn't really fully loaded, but officially everything's loaded up that I wanted to, so we'll call that 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Well, I sure hope the SSD can do better than that. Well, we're about to find out. Okay, now the SSD's turn. 3, 2, 1. And I really hope this can do better than the hard drive. I really do. Okay. Are we going to have it boot up in 30 seconds? No, it doesn't look like it. I said 30 seconds was a reasonable kind of boot up time. Or actually, okay, 35. Okay, that's pretty reasonable. That's Windows booted. Yeah, come on, come on. Come on. That's Google Chrome. That's AVG. Come on. iTunes, Skype. Done. 49 seconds. Wow, look at that. Well, I think it's clear which one won that round. So yeah, SSD much faster. Okay, now we're going to take a quick look at power consumption. Now this is to try and ascertain whether or not the battery life of your laptop will be increased using an SSD over a regular hard drive. Now SSD manufacturers are very quick to use this as one of their main selling points, some of them coming up with outrageously bold claims that it can apparently improve your battery life of up to 35%. Don't quite know where they've got that from. Probably out of thin air, I would imagine, but I don't think you're going to see increases of 35%. I think that's a little bit too good to be true. But the problem is this is actually a really hard thing to test because there are so many variables involved, because it's not just the hard drive that's actually using the power in the laptop. You've got many other items in there like the CPU, the memory, the wireless card, any other adapters you've got in there, the display, the GPU, as well as obviously the hard drive or the SSD itself. So it's actually very difficult to test. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a number of timed runs. So I'm going to charge the laptop up to full. I'm going to put in an SSD or a hard drive. I'm going to get the computer to work from the hard drive. So I'm going to copy files from the hard drive and back onto the hard drive continuously until the battery runs out. I'm going to time those runs, and I'm going to do I'm going to do 3 runs with an SSD, and I'm going to do 3 runs with a hard drive. What I'm actually going to do is stagger the tests. So I'm going to do 1 SSD, 1 hard drive, 1 SSD, 1 hard drive. And this is to remove any variations in the results due to such things like, you know, battery temperature and things like that. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see if there's any dramatic increase in battery life. If I don't see at least 10%, it's going to be really hard to tell, but at least it will give us a rough guess, because it is really hard to do this. So let's go and we'll see. We might be surprised. We might see that 35%, but I very much doubt it. But we'll see what we can get using an SSD over a regular hard drive. So I did the battery tests off camera because they took a really long time, and even with time lapse that would have just been boring. So here's the results for the 3 test runs of each. Now on average the hard drive managed 2 hours and 48 minutes of runtime, whereas the SSD managed an average of 3 hours and 15 minutes of runtime. So that's an overall increase of 16%. Now it's not 35%, but it's still extra battery life, and means that the extra battery life is a bonus feature of installing SSDs. I'm not going to complain. Right, now we're going to do some benchmark tests. Now this is where we're going to get some actual figures, because all of the tests that we've been doing previously have been kind of a visual comparison. But now we're going to get some actual numbers that we can use to directly compare the performance difference between the SSD and the hard drive. So as usual, I'm going to run the test 3 times, and then we'll get the results from both, and we'll see how much better the SSD is actually performing over the regular hard drive. So I did all the benchmarks off camera as well, because that's not exactly exciting to watch. Now I did the test 3 times with 3 different benchmarking software, and here's the 3 results for the hard drive. Now the hard drive managed an average read speed of 89 megabytes per second and an average write speed of 71 megabytes per second. Now for a hard drive that's not too bad, but now let's take a look at the SSD. Now again, I did the test 3 times with 3 different benchmarks, and here's the results. Now the SSD managed an average read speed of 514 megabytes per second and an average write speed of 418 megabytes per second. The performance difference between the two is just worlds apart, and that clunky old mechanical hard drive just doesn't stand a chance. The SSD is just simply much faster. So there you go, it just goes to show that you don't always need a high-end, high-performance gaming rig to take advantage of the performance benefits of an SSD. Even just a cheap common laptop can actually benefit. Now the thing is it actually worth the investment? Well, personally I think it is. I've paid about 50 quid and I've pretty much doubled the performance of my laptop. So to me that's a worthwhile investment, but then I'll leave that decision down to you based on your budget and whether you think it's actually worthwhile. But at least this video has shown you what is actually possible using SSDs. So there you go. I hope this video has been a help. If you've got any questions relating to this, then bung them in the comments section below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So there you go. Hope this has been a help. Thank you for watching. Nice one.